right, good morning, Oorsee family. Today we're talking all about rugby. My guest today is Barry Gazzard. He is a South African expat and he currently lives in Atlanta. And he's going to talk to us about watching rugby in the US and how they try and keep up with the game and how they try and support the Bucks from Atlanta, Georgia. So over to you, Barry. Please give us an introduction and let's start there.
Sure, Walter. Well, thank you for having me on your show or your program. I'm not sure what you call it. But yeah, I've been in the States about 25 years now, so a quarter of a century. It seems it's gone very quickly though. I was 36 when I came over, and I'm 61 now. So gone from middle age to maybe old age. I don't know. But anyway, so I lived 5 years down in the Orlando area, Central Florida, and really didn't have a lot of connections with South Africans down there. And kind of lost touch with rugby and kind of lost touch with my roots a little bit. Moved up to Atlanta after 5 years in Florida and found there were just South Africans coming out of the woodwork, walking out of shops, saw South African number plates when you're driving down the road, or South African flags at least on their plates. And yeah, so we have, I mean, no one's got a firm number, but I've heard numbers of 20, 30,000 South Africans in Metro Atlanta thrown around. Some of them stay to themselves, some of them, some of them are mixed with Americans, but generally you'll bump into them and they're always very friendly. I've really had only good experience with the South Africans I've met here. Ek sal vir jou sê, ek het mees Afrikaans in Atlanta gepraat het, but ek ooit in South Africa gepraat het. And I'm a banana boy.
But I mean, that's a massive number. I knew that kind of Atlanta metro area was probably the hub for South Africans. Probably also because it's the easiest direct flight. You arrive in the US in Atlanta, and some people just think, well, I'm here now, I might as well just stay here. But I mean, yeah, upwards of 20,000. That's a lot of people and a lot of potential Springbok supporters in the city. Absolutely. So tell me about the local rugby team in Atlanta and how you kind of started following them and started the kind of Atlanta supporters group.
Right. So the Atlanta supporters group really started probably about 10, 12 years ago. And at that time, I wasn't aware that there was any South Africans watching rugby, Springbok rugby, on a regular basis. So I set up a Facebook group, and I got a bunch of people to join it. And we found out that there was a group run by a guy called Don Pretorius. And so we joined up with them, and we got another guy called Nico Duplessis, who was involved with schoolboy rugby, which I didn't know existed here either, and got involved in that. And so we started watching a lot of games together. And so that was the start of it, mainly watching Springbok rugby, test matches, etc. But also I also became aware then there was a lot of schoolboy rugby here in Metro Atlanta. And it's, really they've built it up now where they're starting with kids, from junior school right up through high school. And then about, 4 or 5 years ago, Atlanta started a professional rugby team called Rugby ATL. They joined Major League Rugby in the US, which I think has been going about 6 or 7 years prior to that. And so currently there are about 10 teams in the league. And so we had a team, it's a professional team, so we got professional players. And the last 2 years, we probably had more South African players in our team than any of the other teams. There's a limit of how many foreign players you can have. They want to bring in the foreign talent to try and build up the local talent, but also not to crowd out local players. Well, we had a great time. We had a lot of tailgating going on. We probably got about 30 people at the last tailgate. We had maybe 40. Very festive. Right at the entrance, we have all the players run past us.
I want to go back to something you mentioned, because I don't know if a lot of South Africans know the tradition in the US about tailgating. It's when they go and watch an event, they make a whole weekend out of it. You know, they'll show up in the city if they're out of town the couple of days before. If they're locals, they'll go to the event and set up early morning. And it comes from just opening up the tailgate of their truck and then kind of having a party from there, you know, with cooler boxes, and they'll grill something. I know a few South Africans will go to a Springbok game maybe a few hours early and barbecue something outside in the parking lot, but these guys take it to the next level, right? They make a whole event out of it, and some people never even reach the actual sporting event that they're going to because they went too far with the tailgating. I mean, it's massive out here.
Yeah, and it really, you know, in the football world, that's exactly how it does work, and that's what we were trying to get to. So we were generally starting our tailgating 2 hours before the game, which didn't give us much time. You have a couple of beers, throw some boerewors or whatever, hamburgers, you know, get together with people and have the South African flag flying there. And
so if you don't get your fill with the local Atlanta rugby team, right? There's always all the Springbok games. So how do you guys manage to follow the Springbok kind of team, and what are you going to do for the World Cup? Where do you go and watch this? Is there like a community place you'll get together? You know, how does that happen?
A South African couple opened up a cafe called Cafe I Am, and they started hosting the rugby events. And so we got together with them, and Nico du Plessis, who's very involved with the schoolboy rugby, he started a thing called the Rugby Experience with them. And basically, they've been hosting the rugby events. And it's mainly outdoors. And we sit outside in our shorts and our rugby jerseys. I don't have that on today. And our veldskoens if we have that. And, you know, have a few clippies. And they have boerewors rolls. And, yeah, just have a good time. And
I just want to quickly mention, right? So South Africans looking to move to Atlanta, right? And they're afraid that they will lose touch with their culture completely, right? You're telling me that there's still a lot of events going on, but not all of it's rugby based, right? So
Sure.
Can you just quickly tell me about the sense of community there amongst the South Africans? What kind of events you guys have?
So let me just mention there are a couple of South African stores here. I think you went to the South African Emporium. And they stock everything from Marmite to biltong, you know, whatever your Mari biscuits, you know, curry powder, all the good stuff. And so they're pretty big. And there's actually two that operate full time. And there's another guy who does Saturday mornings at markets. He has South African products. And then there's another couple who do sakis. And we just had a good scop recently out in Canton, and I think there was like 110 people who came and, you know, did a lot of dancing and romancing, I think, but a bit of drinking. It was a pretty cool evening.
So this is like an old school sokkie where you can come and dance and hang out with fellow South Africans. What about like food and stuff? Does everybody bring their own? Or you have a cook-off, or what's the setup?
Yeah, that particular one, the last one we had, they did have curry and rice available. So they just decided to do that. But a lot of people, you could bring your own cooler and your own drink. So it was like in a community hall type environment. So everyone just bought, you know, bring your own. So obviously, you saved some money not having to pay, restaurant prices. But yeah, it was a good party, and I think, what did they have? They had milk tat as well as dessert you could buy, and then they had some South African curios and South African themed stuff you could buy. So it was pretty cool.
If a South African family wants to immigrate to the US and they feel strongly that they want to stay connected to their roots, they want to really kind of tie into a South African expat community that's quite active, that can, you know, provide them even stuff like schoolboy rugby, potjiekos competitions, traditional soccer, then Atlanta would be the best place in the USA for them to settle, right?
Well, as a local realtor, 100%, I would have to say correct on that one.
Well, and that was kind of the point I was trying to get to. If they are looking for a house in Atlanta, you're a realtor, you've got decades of experience in the area. How do they get hold of you, and how can you help them to settle in and get a house?
Yeah, so I'm available on WhatsApp. I'll give you my details if you can put that out there, and my email address, and my local cell phone number if they want to call that. So, one of the issues that South Africans are going to have coming over here is they got to establish credit in the USA, and that will take a while, probably 6 months to a year. So they're going to have to rent initially, unless they got the cash just to come and buy a home. I know there are a lot of rich South Africans with dollars, but yeah, but for most South Africans, that first year is really tough, and it's really difficult. Even there's some tricks to get a rental place. So, I can give advice on that, and what to do and not to do. I'll tell you a funny story, Walter. When I first came to America, I spent the first 5 years walking around thinking, these Americans are crazy. Why do they do things this way? And then from year 5 to year 10, I was saying to myself, yeah, they're not so crazy. They got some good points. And then year 10 to 15, I was saying, you know what? These Americans are actually pretty damn smart. And year 15 to 20, I would say to myself, these South Africans come over here, they're crazy. So it's funny how your thinking changes. You're always a South African inside, but you start to adapt. Your whole vernacular, your language has to change.
So
Absolutely,
fantastic.
yeah.
I'll put a link up for all of your details. And then I just want to finish and put you on the spot. How far are the Springboks going to get in this World Cup? You reckon we'll get out of the pool stages? We'll get to the quarterfinals? We'll get to the semis, final, win it? What do you think?
Well, you know what? I'm going to just give you the diplomatic answer. We're going to win the damn thing, okay?
That's what everybody wants to hear, but I'm not so sure of our chances this year. But we're going to support them regardless.
You never asked me to put any money on that, so we'll just stick with. We're going to win the thing.
That's fine. We're going to win the thing. Barry Gazzard, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it, and we'll put a link up with all your details. And if anybody wants to join the Rugby Supporters Club or get a house in Atlanta, he's the guy to talk to. Thanks, Barry.
Okay, well, thank you, buddy. Bye-bye.